Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif says he is ready for a neutral investigation after the devastating terrorist attack that killed 26 in Pahalgam. As diplomatic tensions rise, US President Donald Trump says India and Pakistan should settle the dispute one way or another. Dozens of heads of states have arrived in Italy ahead of Pope Francis's funeral in Rome, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who earlier said he may miss the service. Security has been heightened as thousands of mourners prepare for the funeral. A Hamas delegation is in Cairo today for Gaza ceasefire talks, though the group says disarmament is not up for negotiation. Meanwhile, Donald Trump says he has spoken with Israel's Prime Minister over aid blockages after UN warnings over man-made starvation. Israel's air defences have shot down a missile fired from the Yemen Houthi rebels, according to the IDF. A growing number of strikes from the Iran-backed group have been reported following the resumption of Israeli action in Gaza. US President Donald Trump says a Russia and Ukraine deal is very close following a talk between his envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says real pressure on Russia is needed. Negotiations between the US and Iran will resume today over Tehran's advancing nuclear program. The meetings in Oman come amid fears of escalation following threats of military action from Donald Trump. The World Bank says that developing countries should fast-track US trade deals following the sweeping implementation of tariffs by Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the US president says that markets are adjusting to his tariff policies. Virginia Giuffre, one of the most outspoken accusers of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, has died by suicide at the age of 41. Her family, in a statement, said that she had been a fierce warrior and that the toll of abuse became unbearable. Our top story this hour: in the latest developments following the Pahalgam terror attack that claimed 26 lives, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said that his country is ready to cooperate on a neutral investigation into the recent terrorist attack. Amid ongoing airspace restrictions, India's DGCA has advised airlines to improve passenger communication and in-flight services as flight times grow longer due to Pakistan's airspace closure. Indian security forces have intensified their crackdown on terrorists and their networks in the Kashmir Valley. 7 residential houses linked to active terrorists have been demolished across Pulwama, Kulgam, Tral, Bajabera and Shopian. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council has strongly condemned the attack. In a statement, members underscored the need to bring those responsible, including perpetrators, organisers, financiers and sponsors, to justice. In a related operation, security forces demolished the house of Pahalgam terror-accused Ashan ul-Haq Sheikh in Maran, Pulwama. During the search, an IED was found and destroyed on site due to the risk involved in moving it. The Indian Army reported that several Pakistan Army posts opened unprovoked small arms fire along the line of control during the intervening night of April the 25th. Multiple posts across the de facto boundary separating Indian and Pakistani forces in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh initiated the firing. Indian troops returned fire with no casualties reported. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has downplayed concerns about rising diplomatic tensions between India and Pakistan. Let's listen in.
There have been tensions on that border for 1,500 years. So, the same as it's been, but they'll get it figured out one way or the other. I'm sure that I know both leaders. There's great tension between Pakistan and India, but there always has.
Meanwhile, the US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, expressed solidarity with India, tweeting, "We stand with India in the wake of the horrific Islamist terror attack in Pahalgam, which targeted and killed 26 Hindus." From Pakistan, PPP Chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also shared his thoughts on the Pahalgam attack. Let's listen in.
It's unfortunate that each terrorist attack is turned into a bilateral dispute rather than us focusing on combating terrorism itself. In this instant, as you've seen, it was a terrorist attack in Indian-occupied Kashmir, and the Indian government lost no time in blaming Pakistan.
Meanwhile, Iran has offered to mediate between India and Pakistan, highlighting Iran's deep cultural connections with both nations. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi quoted Saadi Shirazi's 13th century poem Bani Adam to stress the shared bond of humanity. A senior Saudi official said Riyadh is actively working to prevent an escalation between the two nuclear-armed neighbours. Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan has personally spoken with his Indian and Pakistani counterparts in separate phone calls, according to his office. Well, joining us to discuss these latest developments is Brian Thomas, a correspondent with NewsX and NewsX World. He's joining us from Shopian in Jammu and Kashmir, India. Brian, thank you for joining us. What can you tell us about these operations that took place on 7 residents within the region, leading to the destroying of homes and an IED as well?
Well, clearly, from yesterday itself, the security forces have been very vigilant to identify, to track and punish the very militants. In South Kashmir's many such districts, you talk about Pulwama, you talk about Kulgam, you talk about Tral, you talk about Bijbehara, or you talk about Shopian. There have been many such places, or Aharabal as well. Many such places, there have been many such counters that have been taken by the security forces to demolish houses of the militants itself. Yesterday night also there were many such, and these operatives have started yesterday itself, day before yesterday itself. Today also in the morning itself, there were many such houses that was demolished also. We've even exclusively filed a report also from Tral itself to show the situation there. Earlier we were in Shopian also, we were in Pulwama itself to show the situation there after the houses were demolished. And yes, security forces have been vigilant itself. Even the army chief has taken many such high-level meetings. He has been advised also to be briefed every hour of the operations that have been taken by the J&K police, by the CRPS, by the 16 corps commanders. So all these operations have been done to identify and to punish the terrorists, to punish the homes also who were responsible for the deadly attack that happened in Pahalgam that costed lives of 26 innocent and 17 who have been still injured itself. Yes.
Yes, Brian, I also want to look at the diplomatic situation here. Of course, we've heard from Donald Trump, we've heard from Iran's foreign minister, we've heard from Saudi's foreign minister as well. What do you think the global community's role will be in trying to look at a de-escalation of situations?
Well, clearly, there have been many such diplomatic support also that India has been gaining, and there is a diplomatic concern also after the attack. Many world leaders came out to support India in the times of the horror that Kashmir witnessed, where 26 innocent tourists were killed. Even UN has also come out in support and said that there should not be any war-like situation that should be prevailed. Even US President Donald Trump has also given statements also saying that one should be there should be a solution towards this problem. And very importantly, there have been international support also. You talk about United Kingdom, you talk about China, you talk about US, you talk about France. Even the G7 nations also came out in support of towards India for this very incident that has happened. Many such envoys were also dialing. Italian Prime Minister, many such international envoys were dialing the Prime Minister, having a telephonic conversation also to understand and to take a stock of the situation, and also show their solidarity for the loss that India has seen, with 26 people losing their lives, unfortunately.
Yes, Brian, finally I want to touch on the comment that we've heard from Pakistan's Prime Minister, saying his nation is ready for a neutral investigation. What does that mean, and what's the general consensus with locals who of course have been privy and part of this harrowing terrorist attack, it being on their doorstep and affecting their community as well?
Well, clearly, there has been a back foot also that have been taken by by Pakistan itself. Yes, following the very devastating Pahalgam attack, now Sharif's statement aligns with remarks from Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif, who has also called for an international probe, asserting that now Pakistan is ready to cooperate with international investigators as well. And this escalation will be costing a lot of big losses for Pakistan itself, with the Indus Water Treaty also being suspended. So yes, there have been troubles that will be emanating, that will be formulating in Pakistan itself, and now we can see there is a back foot also that have been given by the Prime Minister himself.
Brian Thomas, thank you ever so much for joining us live from Jammu and Kashmir in India. We move on now, and the world has gathered in Rome today to bid farewell to Pope Francis, who passed away on Monday at the age of 88. Thousands of mourners have already filed into St. Peter's Square ahead of the Pontiff's funeral mass, which begins at 10 a.m. local time. More than 200,000 people are expected to attend, including over 50 heads of state and 10 reigning monarchs. Among the confirmed attendees are US President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky will also be present. He has arrived in Rome despite earlier uncertainties over his travel plans due to what he called military meetings. The Vatican has kept the public viewing of the Pope's coffin closed after over 250,000 mourners paid their respects over the past 3 days. Today, his casket will be carried through St. Peter's Square, with foreign dignitaries and cardinals gathered for a solemn ceremony under tight security. This marks a significant moment in the life of the Roman Catholic Church, as the Pope, known as the Pope of the Poor, leaves behind a legacy of compassion and inclusivity. Security around the square has also been heightened, and the area is now a gathering place for both the faithful and world leaders. We bring you now some breaking news, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky may meet with US leader Donald Trump in Rome, where both are attending Pope Francis's funeral. A senior official confirmed the potential meeting to AFP, though no details have been officially released. Trump suggested on Friday that Russia and Ukraine are very close to a deal to end the ongoing war. We head now to the Middle East, and a senior Hamas official says a delegation led by Khalil al-Hayya has departed for Cairo for talks with Egyptian mediators. The meeting scheduled for today will focus on Hamas's position to end the ongoing war in Gaza. The group has firmly reiterated that its disarmament is not up for negotiation. This comes as efforts to reach a ceasefire remain stalled. Israel resumed its military assault in Gaza after ceasefire talks broke down. A second phase of the ceasefire deal couldn't be reached, with no further hostage releases agreed upon. Hamas still continues to hold 59 hostages captive, 35 of whom Israel believe to be dead. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has said that he urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to allow food and medicine into the devastated Gaza Strip. Trump says Netanyahu responded positively, but aid remains blocked with no deliveries since March the 2nd. Let's hear what Trump said.
Into Gaza. When you spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu the other day, did that come up at all about access and that is community?
No, Gaza came up, and I said, gotta be good to Gaza. Those people are suffering. We got to be good to Gaza. We're going to take care of that. There's a very big need for medicine, food and medicine, and we're taking
To open up more access.
very hard to get food and medicine to Gaza.
How did the Prime Minister respond to it?
Well, felt well about it.
In northern Gaza, the Israeli military has issued fresh evacuation orders warning residents in 3 neighbourhoods to move westward ahead of planned strikes. The military claims it's responding to renewed terrorist activity. In addition, the UN's World Food Programme has announced that it has run out of food stocks in Gaza as Israel's blockade continues into its 8th week. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini, has confirmed the blockade as man-made and politically motivated starvation. He said that calls to bring in aid are being ignored. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is sounding the alarm as well. The Director General of WHO has said that medical supplies in Gaza are also running out and insists the aid blockade must now end, warning that lives depend on it. The death toll in Gaza since the war resumed in March has risen to over 51,000 according to local media reports since the conflict erupted in October 2023. Staying in the region now, the Israeli army says it has successfully intercepted a missile launched from Yemen early on Saturday morning. The missile fired by Houthi rebels triggered sirens in southern Israel, including Beersheba. Thankfully, there were no reports of injuries or damage. The Israel Defense Forces confirmed the missile was neutralized before it could cross into Israeli territory. This attack marks another incident in a series of missile launches from the Iran-backed Houthi group targeting Israel. An early warning alert was issued, but reports indicate that a new system designed to notify civilians of missile threats malfunctioned during the events. The Houthis have yet to claim responsibility for this latest strike, which follows a similar attack earlier this week in northern Israel. We head now to Europe, and US President Donald Trump says Russia and Ukraine are very close to a deal following a fresh round of Kremlin talks. Trump confirmed that his envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and described the meeting as pretty good. Here is what Trump said.
It's going very well. I think Russia and Ukraine, I think they're coming along, we hope. They're fragile. He'll be calling me. They just left the meeting. I haven't been briefed yet, but he had it. I hear a pretty good meeting.
He added that most major points had been agreed upon and urged both sides to meet again at high levels to finish it off and stop the bloodshed now. The Kremlin also confirmed the talks, calling them constructive and very useful. Putin reportedly discussed the possibility of direct talks with Ukraine. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky firmly rejected any proposal that involves surrendering Crimea. Speaking in Kyiv, he declared Crimea belongs to Ukraine. Our position is unchanged. He emphasised that only the Ukrainian people can decide on territorial matters. Zelensky acknowledged Ukraine lacks the military strength to retake Crimea by force, but called for sanctions, economic pressure and diplomacy once a total ceasefire is in place. Here is what Zelensky said.
Наша позиція, вона незмінна, тільки український народ має право вирішувати, які території є українськими. І Конституція України говорить, що всі тимчасово окуповані території, вони тимчасово окуповані. Вони всі належать Україні, українському народу. Україна не буде визнавати юридично будь-які тимчасово окуповані.
Moving on now, and the World Bank is urging developing countries to act fast on trade. President Ajay Banga says they could strike trade deals with the United States and should do so as early as possible. Speaking at the IMF and World Bank spring meetings in Washington, Banga said delays in negotiations could hurt everyone. His comments come amid rising uncertainty over US tariff policies under President Donald Trump. Let's listen in to the World Bank President Ajay Banga.
We've been saying to them is three things. First, you need to negotiate trade systems with the US at the earliest possible. If you delay, it hurts everybody. That, I think, is just practical advice. But the second part of it is, if you look at the history, the US actually has the lowest tariffs of any country in the system. And you'll find the developing world tends to have higher tariffs than the developed world on the whole. And I've been encouraging them, think about lowering your tariffs so that on the whole, everyone benefits. There's enough economic evidence to show that lower tariffs are good for everyone. So that's the second thing we're encouraging them. Third thing is encouraging them to do more trade among them.
Since returning to office, Trump has slapped a 10% baseline tariff on most imports and much higher rates on key sectors like steel, aluminium and autos. Tariffs on dozens of countries have been paused, but the threat still remains. Trump insists the measures are aimed at getting fairer terms for American businesses, especially with China. But the back and forth is rattling markets and worrying investors. The World Bank says after securing US deals, developing nations should focus on lowering regional trade barriers and boosting intra-regional flows. Let's hear what Trump has said on the matter.
You've got the 190-day clause on some of the tariffs. Is it possible you'll have to do another 90-day or another extensively unlikely? I think I know pretty much. And again, you know, we'll have deals made, but we'll also make deals. Otherwise, we'll just set the tariff and we'll be reasonable, very reasonable, and that'll be the end. It's the deal. Because, you know, we set the price. They want to come in. Now, they set the price for their country, but everybody wants to come into ours. They don't want to come into theirs. Most people don't want to come into theirs. Do you think the markets are adjusting to your tariff policy? So when you look at what's happening, I think so. You know, like I said, there'd be a transition. People haven't understood it. Now they're starting to understand it.
Staying in North America now, federal agents have arrested Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Duggan, accusing her of obstructing an immigration arrest inside of her courthouse. FBI Director Kash Patel said Duggan misdirected agents trying to detain Mexican national Eduardo Flores Ruiz, allowing him to exit through a jury door. Trump responded by saying the courts are holding us back. Let's listen to Trump's statement.
Judge Hannah Duggan's arrest is not just about her, right? This is about striking fear in the heart of the judiciary across the entire country. She's the first she's the first official who's been targeted by the Trump regime, and that's because they care about destroying our checks and balances. They care about power. That's what this is. It's not about the judge that's in there right now who's just charged with 2 felonies. It's about striking fear in the judiciary across the entire country.
Judge Duggan, who was elected in 2016, faces 2 federal charges, which are obstruction and concealing an individual. She made no comment during her court appearance. Her lawyer says she will fight the charges. Protesters gathered outside the Milwaukee courthouse demanding due process, chanting "Free the judge now." Critics, including lawmakers, called the arrest a dangerous overreach of federal power. We, of course, just heard there, not Donald Trump, but what a protester had to say after the arrest. Meanwhile, migrants discouraged by Trump's crackdown are seeking help to return home. Dozens stranded in Honduras await UN-assisted repatriation flights after abandoning US asylum hopes. Demand for voluntary return has surged, with requests tripling this year. We stay in North America, and candidates for Canada's next Prime Minister campaigned across the country on Friday, making their final push before Monday's general election. Liberal leader and current Prime Minister Mark Carney visited Algoma Steel in Ontario, highlighting challenges facing Canada's struggling industries. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre rallied support in Saskatoon, a known Conservative stronghold. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh campaigned in Toronto. emphasising his party's commitment to protecting healthcare and tackling the rising cost of living. We're just days before voting. The latest polls show a tight race between the Liberals and Conservatives. So let's listen in to what the contenders have had to say.
President Trump, his words and actions, he wants to divide us because dividing us would make his job easier. He's trying to break us so that America can own us. And that will never happen. We will stand with the auto workers, with the forestry workers, the aluminum workers, and above all, the steel workers.
Opportunity, big as the prairie sky. That is my purpose in politics, to bring home Canada's promise, but it takes change to do it. And on Monday, we all need to vote for change. Now let's bring it home. Thank you very much.
This budget, in the first budget, we want to see commitments to help us get to a point where every Canadian has access to a family doctor. And we want to see an expansion of our pharmacare to include all essential medication.
Moving on now, the United States and Iran are set to resume a third round of technical and high-level nuclear talks in Oman today, following signs of progress in earlier discussions. Yesterday, Iran's delegation, led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, arrived in Muscat. He expressed cautious optimism, saying Iran is open to a deal as long as US demands remain practical. However, he warned that any unrealistic expectations from Washington could hinder the progress. The US team is expected to be led by Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi attended a book fair in the Omani capital, where he signed copies of the Arabic translation of his book. Araghchi described the book as a result of his 40 years of experience in foreign policy. He said it includes personal accounts from various negotiations, including key moments from Iran's nuclear talks. President Trump, in an interview with Time magazine, reiterated that military action remains on the table if talks fail, but added he would prefer reaching a deal over taking military steps. Staying in the Middle East, and Syria's new Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabaini raised the country's new 3-starred flag at the United Nations in New York, marking a historic moment. The flag, adopted after the December fall of Bashar al-Assad, symbolises the revolt against his regime. Shaibani called it a step Syrians had wanted for 14 years. His move was part of a larger push for international recognition of Syria's new government. In response, the United States outlined its demands for Syria at the UN. These include renouncing terrorism and ensuring non-aggression towards neighbouring states. They also call for preventing foreign terrorist fighters from holding official roles. Here is what Assad al-Shabaini, Syria's foreign minister, said.
فبينما فتحت سوريا أبوابها للدول ومنحت الأمل لشعبها في العودة، يستمر العبء الناجم عن العقوبات التي تهدد استقرارنا. فعندما تسعى المنظمات الدولية والشركات للاستثمار في اقتصادنا وإعادة بنائه، تجد أن تلك العقوبات المنتهية الصلاحية تقف حائلاً أمام ذلك. إن هذه الإجراءات التقييدية التي فرضت على نظام سابق بائد تمنع رؤوس الأموال والخبرات من الدخول، فيما تتيح للشبكات غير المشروعة أن تزدهر. في الواقع سيد الرئيس.
Meanwhile, acting US Ambassador Dorothy Shea emphasised that Washington will monitor Syria's actions before considering sanctions relief. Here's what the US Ambassador said.
The United States continues to closely monitor the actions of the Syrian interim authorities. We remain hopeful that the interim cabinet announced by the interim authorities at the end of March represents a positive step. However, we expect to see additional action and the appointment of more qualified and representative individuals to serve.
Shaibani's appearance at the UN marks the first time a high-ranking Syrian official has attended since Assad's fall, while the US insists on further reforms. Many UN members see this as a positive step for Syria's future. Moving now to Africa, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have pledged to reach a draft peace deal by May the 2nd. At a meeting in Washington, the two nations signed a joint declaration. It was signed in the presence of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Both states vowed to respect each other's sovereignty and to resolve disputes through diplomacy. This comes just days after a surprise truce brokered by Qatar. The M23 rebel group, which both the US and the UN say has been backed by Rwanda, continues to control key areas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Both the foreign ministers signed the agreement separately, with Rubio watching over. They did not shake hands with each other for the cameras. Let's listen in to what the foreign ministers of the DRC and Rwanda have had to say.
The urgency of this initiative is not theoretical, it is human. We signed this declaration of principles not as a symbolic gesture, but as a political commitment, a reaffirmation of principles enshrined in international law, and most recently echoed in the UN Security Council Resolution 2773, a resolution calling for the immediate, unconditional, and verifiable withdrawal of all foreign troops from sovereign territory of the DRC.
Our common aim is to conclude a comprehensive peace agreement as soon as possible. But there are no shortcuts or quick fixes, and we have to do the hard work to get it done right, once and for all. Rwanda is committed, and we are ready to continue working together with all the partners involved to ensure the success of this.
Well, that is all we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more of the latest breaking news from across the world.